to like having to find only moves now, but he is finding them.
Yeah, he does that, you know.
Sometimes, once in a while. Come on, Aman. Don't overstate the case here. This isn't the SEC finals or anything. Oh!
Wow, so clever.
He's won a pawn. How? I don't know.
King E4,
the knight
knight
heading
C2,
to F4.
bishop C5, bishop to D8. Got it.
Oh my gosh. Now suddenly White's the one who has to be careful. Knight F4 is coming.
It really feels like someone.
Oh, knight F2. He's going to win. Or is he?
Regardless of whether he's going to win, it's phenomenal that he's done what he's done. How is he up a pawn from that endgame?
It's you watch the moves. I see the moves. My brain processes the moves, and I still can't understand how we have a 2-on-1. And the worst thing is Hikaru can now milk another minute off the clock.
That's right.
And knight d5 threatened.
Yep, and he can just shuffle that knight around. There's no big urgency.
That's such a devilish little move, because Magnus could have very easily pre-moved a king move there.
Totally.
He should hold it now, but it's still hard. Hikaru getting his king around. Ugh.
Yeah. King F5, bishop E5. There's some H3, knight F4 stuff.
And finally, Magnus is going to bag the H3 pawn and bag the G5 pawn and force this game, this never-ending game, to end. And Hikaru's still keeping the pawn on the board.
I think
97.
97, yeah.
And now wait 5 seconds and then take the queen. Maximum squeeze.
Totally. And let's not sugarcoat it. That wasn't just a maximum squeeze in a gamesmanship way. No, he was playing for a win there, in case you forgot.
And he was briefly winning according to the eval bar if he had moved the knight to f2, but that ship has sailed, and they repeat an opening that we saw quite a bit in the 3-minute portion. A Sicilian with a bishop on c3. I don't love the way this starts for Hikaru. I mean, Magnus just seems to have gotten a very, very nice setup here.
Yep. A3 and C3, you can see the desperation to get that bishop back to C3.
Yeah, get rid of that pawn, Magnus. And Magnus says, no, I will not.
Bishop E3. I mean, again, hoping to have B takes C3 played. I still feel like Magnus is really, really happy with how this has started.
But he's got to figure out a way to protect the D7 pawn, either directly or indirectly, as he's done. Now he can castle. Look at this tactical awareness I'm on. Queen takes D7, rook D8 traps the queen. That's such a hard idea to see in bullet.
And it was because of queen B8 covering the C7 square, so he totally planned that.
I would put the queen on C7, though, to give the rook a little bit more latitude along the 8th rank. Maybe later you can play rook A8. Magnus burning a lot of clock here, and this is what he was spending it on. What a sacrifice. And E4's hanging. The B3 bishop is under fire. Hikaru's got to be really careful to keep his position together here.
Yeah, maybe... Okay, yeah, this is probably more what Magnus was looking for. 2 bishops, imbalanced pawn structure.
Don't take with a knight. Don't take with a knight. Bishop A4 wins the piece, and Hikaru sees it.
Yeah, but this is fantastic for the bishops, right? It's exactly what you want.
Magnus, this is precisely the kind of position that we're used to seeing him winning regularly. E5 and bishop C6?
Yeah, knight B5, bishop C6. Knight F3, you could just take it. I think that's... Oh, he wants to play the bishops. Because there was one school of thought, just take, rook takes B3, but maybe that position is just objectively very hard to win.
Well, Magnus wants to take Hikaru to school in this endgame, and I think he thinks, Amon, that you can win the B3 pawn on demand. So he wants to extract more out of the position. Maybe milk White's clock down, but he's milking his own clock down as a result.
F5, F4. Okay, he's going to just defend for now, but going very aggressive now. Magnus has overpressed before.
And he's overpressed again, or has he? Because bishop F2 runs into rook A1, but there's the move B4, and Hikaru missed it. B4 would have kept the C5 pawn defended. Now it should be technically winning for Carlsen.
He keeps the rooks on. I don't know whether that was a chance to trade it off. I think Hikaru made the right choice, though.
D5 now is going to come with devastating effects. Look at Black's pawn phalanx. Not over yet, though. Hikaru's rook is very, very active. And if you push your pawns prematurely, bishop D4.
Wow. Is he just going to try to, stay in this position? Okay, he's giving H7.
And rook A6, there's rook B6, and that spells trouble. But is this winning? It is.
That was quick.
It is. But not easy. Look at
So-
Hikaru using every last resource, but he's just not
Bishop
fast enough.
F6.
King C2 now. Ooh.
Yeah, bishop E3 and
Bishop G3.
remember there's like this H pawn bishop configuration on the H1 square.
Oh, D2. Apparently that was wrong. E5. Oh my gosh, this is so close to a draw all of a sudden. H6.
Amazing. Wow.
But how do you win this? Do you get your king back to G4?
Yeah,
get
you
your
leave
king
bishop
back.
C3 and now you just walk. And eventually you'll have to play G7 and then you're playing what? These two pawns against the bishop? How does that work?
Aman, I don't think I would have found H6 in a classical game. That is inhuman to leave the protected passer on G3.
G7.
And now it's finally completely winning. Or is it?
Nah, but yeah, you really have to work again here though. This is very
Wrong
specific.
color pawn, but he's going to get the bishop off.
I mean, that win was truly insane. We are looking at a match between two of the best players in the world, and one of them happens to be Magnus Carlsen, who's a wizard in the endgame. You talk about Hikaru's bullet prowess. How about Magnus's endgames?
Considering that they had 10 seconds on their clock, no, it wasn't flawless. Yes, Hikaru almost got back in the game, which is incredible on its own merits. But the way that Magnus found H6 and walked on hot coals there is amazing. And we have another Rui Lopez and another King's Indian-like structure with a very early C5 push by Magnus.
Yeah, and another tied match. 10.5, 10.5. Talk about it going down to the wire. We're halfway through this match, and guess what? It has the makings of that, photo finish.
Oh, it absolutely does. You know this is going to be a photo finish. Halfway through the 1 minute portion, and Carlsen sacking the pawn there. Hikaru could have advanced it to f4 and taken on c5, but in the King's Indian, Aman, this is a very standard way to sack in order to open up the queen side. Now, with White's control over the e4 square, I think Magnus has the upper hand.
Yeah, and this bishop on e3, I mean, it makes sense to take, but as soon as you do, the knight will return to the d4 square that you once had covered.
Yeah, it's like playing, knockout basketball. You knock someone's ball out, they get angry, and they're like, I'm going to come back and knock your ball out. But knight d4 doesn't tell the whole story because White also controls the c-file. There is, Aman, the idea of an exchange sacrifice on d4. Potentially, you could go rook c4, rook takes d4. So I still think Hikaru rather has the shorter end of the stick, and he's given up h6.
Ooh, yeah, and it looks like knight d4 takes, there was knight e2, but a lot of pawns fall in that position.
I actually think practically this is a very hard position for Magnus to handle, and he's handling it incredibly.
Didn't even realize it was hanging there. What a move, queen h4. Hikaru spotted that in like a nanosecond.
But he couldn't take on g6 there because of rook g3. Magnus secures the pawn, and can he go down the c-file with queen c3, queen c7?
True. Yeah, going with the queen makes more sense. You actually have some threats like queen h7 there, but you're also giving away the f2 pawn in the process.
G7. Hikaru allowing queen c1. I think that might win.
Yeah, if the rook goes to c8, it's over, but he decides to take. However, what do you do about this pawn? This is a serious problem.
Hikaru has to keep the d6 pawn protected. Magnus helping himself to another pawn. Queen takes a6. Hikaru doing everything he can to open up White's king. But I think Magnus has enough here.
Back.
Queen f1 and queen e1.
Queen f1. That's the move. Yeah.
And it's totally winning. Too many extra pawns here.
Now the queen has to go back, and you can basically serve up a distraction on the a-file. Black's two pieces need to be near the king.
Sloppy there by Magnus. Queen to e6 would have been an easier win. He plays it now. Hikaru could have actually snagged the pawn on g7, but it was lost anyway. And Magnus is back on top.
Wow. Just like that, Magnus flips the script. If I'm remembering correctly, Hikaru started out with that win, right? Because Magnus, effectively some kind of brain slipped his queen, right? And that's how things started. But this is how they're going. And currently Magnus has retaken that lead. It probably feels good because he hasn't had it in a while.
Which is crazy to say, given how the match started. We're getting another endgame. And in the early going, Aman, I'm not suggesting that Hikaru's bad at endgames, but Carlsen is getting exactly the kinds of positions that he really, really wants in the last couple of games.
That's right. That's right. And now Hikaru down in the match, might have to shift the strategy because what was working for you before might not be applicable anymore.
But he's trying to work on Black's center. Obviously, Black is the bishop pair, but the kingside pawn structure is really weak, and the d5 pawn is weak. I think we're going to get some sort of major liquidation here Rook takes d5. There's bishop to e6. So Magnus might actually play down a pawn here for a bit. Oh, bishop f4 almost wins an exchange, but the knight blocks.
Yeah, and you have to be careful of bishop e3, pawn e3. It looks like you're shattering white's pawn structure, but the bishop against the knight is not favorable for black. So if white can liquidate these pawns over here, I think b3 is not crazy, just to make sure you get that nasty a-pawn off the board.
Oh, absolutely, and that's precisely what Hikaru will focus on. I think a draw here is likely, although I keep saying that, and then crazy stuff keeps happening in the endgame. We're going to see the trade on e3. No, Magnus is playing for a win here. He's keeping both of his bishops on the board. I think, Aman, you called it. I would take and go b3 if I'm Hikaru.
Yep. Same idea. b3 now. And, okay, this is what I'm wondering. Is Magnus now not going to acquiesce to the draw? Because, okay, maybe I prefer the knight, but do I prefer the knight when I'm down in the match, like playing this on for any reason?
So, Aman, I think as long as both rooks are on the board, I actually prefer black because his rooks are more active. I think white is the one who has to exercise caution. Now, if the knight lands on h5, then the script flips, as you said earlier. But right now, I think Magnus is still playing this on the merits of the position.
Right. Yep, makes sense.
But
needs to keep those rooks on the board, and he goes back to a1, and he can just move the king, like king g6 or something, and continue.
My goodness, 11 minutes left in the bullet segment. Hikaru down by 1. First of all, he needs to hold this position. He cannot afford a loss here. And I think he's doing an excellent job of defending this essentially from a position of strength. I think it's time to repeat moves. Or is Hikaru going for it now?
I don't think Hikaru's going. I think Magnus is saying, hey, you want to play positions out? Let's play positions out. I'm happy to do it now that I have the edge in the match.
And now he trades rooks. This obviously increases the likelihood of a draw. Hikaru preventing f5 and fixing black's pawns on weak squares. But that king on g6 is ideally placed to keep everything under lock and key. This one is going to liquidate.
Yeah, I immediately saw e4 and I was like, I'm not sure if I like that move. But if the idea is to liquidate and just get out of this game as fast as possible, it makes total sense.
It does indeed. Hikaru's still making threats there. Oh, and he can take e6 and take f6 and take g6, but that is a drawn rook endgame. And
it's almost like if you get into that endgame, Magnus is down a pawn, but he's happy because the game will go for a while.
Totally. And look, we're under 10 minutes in the match. Now a draw is all but guaranteed, and Hikaru trying to keep pieces on the board. This move, e5, tells me that Hikaru is still entertaining hopes of some sort of knight fork, but it's unrealistic.
Yeah, how? I mean, if you move the knight, there's rook e4 always, so it feels like there's just no progress to be made, and not to mention the h-pawn is just loose.
And Hikaru keeps trying to find ways to keep the game going, but it's finally a draw, and Magnus maintains his 1-point lead and has the white pieces with which he's been able to put major pressure in the last segment of this match.
And it goes without saying that with less than 10 minutes to go, don't think of these bullet games, Danya, as like, oh, 2 minutes for that game, 2 minutes for that game. No, these bullet games with plus 1 second, they can go 5-6 minutes. Remember, we had a game that looked like it was taking like 6+ minutes, and we were like, wait a minute, did this segment just start?
Yeah, this is not like the Bullet Brawl where you can get 10 games in the last 5 minutes. And look at Hikaru. Yep. I think he, of all people, senses the urgency, and he says, I'm going to go for Magnus's throat. And I think he's doing a great job of it. Magnus has misplayed the opening. Queen e8, queen h5. It's an easy position to play, and that is the main thing, which makes white have a difficulty here.
Totally. And look at this. Bishop takes c6. Hikaru doesn't care. He says, go ahead and win that pawn. I mean, at this point, I may consider c5. But, yeah, he was happy to give it up and play on what I was expecting to be the king side. But Magnus is trying to say, hey, focus over here. Don't forget about my king.
Magnus is doing an amazing job of deflecting Hikaru from the king side to the queen side, which he's opened up. And look at Magnus making strides and trying to infiltrate. Rook c7 would threaten a potential mate on h7, and Hikaru has to shoo the queen away, but down goes the pawn.
And rook takes d6, just as a practical bullet move, is right around the corner, so don't forget about that.
Rook f6, that's a sad necessity for Nakamura. I think you're exactly right. Keeping his center protected, but giving Magnus an important tempo that he uses to bring his rook back to the 7th rank.
Maybe d5, although there is a rook c6 move. Yeah, he gets out of the way of that. The rook needs to move.
Watch out. Rook takes a2. I would throw that in if I'm Hikaru. Just get rid of that passed pawn. And now
Don't wanna
any
deal with that.
in-game is going to be more defensible for black. I think he's making strides to take over this game once again.
Bishop h3, knight h4 is a nice shot.
And he plays it anyway and gets the other knight to f3. The f5 square. Watch out for that square if you're Hikaru. Ooh.
This is really well played by Magnus right now. Even though he might not be maximizing his advantage, he just wants to neutralize what Hikaru is trying to drum up on the king side.
He definitely has the initiative, but bishop e7 is such a cagey move. Look at that knight on h4. It's kind of stranded, and you're not playing g3 anytime soon because that loosens up the other knight. It's very much a 3-result game.
Absolutely. This is unclear to the max. Queen
Rook
d5.
Uh-oh. Rook f8. Rook takes e7.
I would take and just take d6. It's bullet. Just get things off the board.
That was winning him on because of the fork threat on g6. Instead, he puts piggies on the 7th, and this is still very difficult for Nakamura.
Oh, that's a depressing move to play. Rook e8, sort of admitting that the tactics aren't working for black.
But rook g7 is exquisite defensive play. The rook on e8 is now guarded by the queen. Well, what do you do?
Everything is barely holding on. Unbelievable.
Rook takes e7. There goes a minor piece. That's hanging.
But is there rook takes g2?
Oh my gosh. There's rook h7 there as a result. Hikaru going all in, sacking the piece.
Wow.
But queen d3 is going to stabilize.
Amazing. Queen d3 holds absolutely everything. Rook g3 there was again rook h7.
Uh-oh, queen h6 threatened. Hikaru defends. The queen can shuttle, trampolining back and forth, threatening mates galore. Rook f7, trading rooks, winning. And he's
going to resign immediately. Yep. He knows he needs to resign. He needs the next game to get underway. It's not full panic mode yet, but this game is super important. If it's a long, drawn-out game, especially if it's a draw, this might be it for Hikaru Nakamura.
I think he's now officially thinking of this as a must-win game. And it's interesting to me that he keeps repeating this weird bishop c4 line in the Sicilian. Now it makes sense, though, because at the very least, you're guaranteeing an unbalanced game.
Yep, and this is an improvement from last time. Remember bishop c3, those positions weren't working out. Instead, he's going back to what has worked. Queen h5, he might be trying to really drum up an attack, and Magnus says no.
And it goes without saying that Nakamura keeps his queens on the board. I like this setup a lot more with his pawn on c3 and more space than he did in the previous Sicilian game. But Magnus, classic Sicilian maneuver, and now we have a more standard type of Scheveningen structure.
Yeah, and there it is. h4. It needs to happen. We might see knight h2, rook d3, rook g3. I like it from Nakamura. He can turn it on when he needs a result. And look, the attacking games have worked for him against Magnus so far.
Oh my goodness, pandemonium on the board. We keep seeing Magnus advance that d-pawn, but from a practical perspective, I think rook g3 is an excellent move. There's a lot of threats to deal with, and Aman, don't sleep on the c2 bishop. White could play e takes d5 and queen d3, and if the black king sidesteps to h8, I think that might be a huge issue. So he goes the other way.
Yep. I wonder if it's time to remove this bishop with bishop g5, because you could also just bring the bishop all the way back. You're not worried about bishop d4. h6 is your next idea. You're opening things up and bringing the black king to the center of the board where it's going to be exposed.
And the best news yet is that Hikaru has 50 seconds on his clock as Magnus with some crazy tactics.
What is this move all about?
Bishop takes b2. He wants bishop takes d4, and the c2 bishop is going to hang. But what I don't like about this move is that Hikaru can ignore everything, go h6, and tear black to shreds on the king side.
This looks scary, and this is exactly where Nakamura has found success, attacking Magnus's king.
h7? h7?
Wow,
He's winning,
h7,
but it's the only move.
But how do you continue from there? Queen b7?
Queen b7 and knight c6.
Oh, and then knight c6.
Whoa.
Wow.
And he's going to win. Queen takes c8 is winning. You can give up e1 with check and just sidestep with king h2.
And the h-pawn queens.
Whoa.
What the heck is knight f5?
Trying to get black to play ef so white could take the queen with check, but queen takes h7, and Magnus is still in the game.
The pawn is hanging.
Does he see it?
Missed it? He doesn't see it.
Bishop a3.
Where's he going? He's going for a jog.
Nerves. That
this
was
is
pure
completely
nerve.
lost.
And Hikaru's laughing because Aman, after queen takes h7, it was winning, but it was still a game. And Hikaru wins the first game on demand.
And I think maybe it is a wry smile because he's like, okay, we got exactly what the people want. We got one more game. And I think it's still possible that it could be a draw and we get another game, but highly unlikely. Very good chance that this is the final game of the match and a must win for Hikaru Nakamura.
and he unbalances the game immediately. He plays e4, e5, but he puts his knight on e7. He tries to get opposite side castling, but he's already in trouble because you can't castle short. You're going to drop the h6 pawn. So I don't like what he's gotten here early on. The knight can land on d5. This is a Carlsen type of position.
It is, but you know what? You got to cut Hikaru some slack here because he needs an imbalanced position, and sometimes you have to just take a bad position straight up and then turn it into a good one later. So at the very least, it's not some sort of equal game that's going to be a draw.
And I like what he's doing. He's gotten his king to relative safety. He could strike with f5 and create tension in the center. That's a very thematic idea in these types of positions, Amon. Instead, he's playing this more defensively, though, with rook c8. Knight d4,
Yeah,
maybe.
and I think Magnus is also, he's looking like he wants to go for some trades here.
Bishop a2, and queen e6 is going to pick up the pawn.
What a shot.
No way. And now Hikaru with a clearly better position, up a full pawn, and white's king has been breached.
Yeah, and now with the time getting as low on the match clock, this is it, guys. This game needs to be a win for Hikaru, and he set himself up to do it.
But he's got the hardest task still ahead of him, because if he goes for the queen trade, try winning that opposite colored bishop endgame against Magnus Carlsen. Hikaru says, out of the question. I'm keeping the kings on the board, but Magnus keeps improving his position. Whoa!
H5.
What a move! He wants rook a1 eventually.
Yep.
Oh, I thought he should have played f5 there.
That would have been very interesting. But instead, he's just looking to simplify. Okay, a5, rook a1, b6. The pawns are going to go in dark squares. King is going to go to b7.
What a move by Hikaru, shutting down white's rook, and Magnus has to bring everything back. I think the position is now getting worse.
Yep, Hikaru's playing really well because the rooks were too advanced on the king side. Like, what are they doing, Magnus? Bring them back.
And king b7, another amazing move. Nakamura says, hey, you want to attack down the a-file? No. I'm the boss down the a-file. Magnus doing everything he can to distract Nakamura. Here comes the queen. Here come the mate threats.
No.
Dire straits for Magnus. He's on the ropes.
I don't even know what to recommend here.
Queen c1, rook a2.
It's insane. I can't find a move. Hikaru is doing it.
He's got 15 seconds to find a move, and Magnus closes his eyes and goes all in. And
oh my goodness, rook takes b6.
Rook a2. He missed it.
Oh my goodness, rook takes b6 again.
Rook takes b6 and it's over. Rook takes
it's
b6.
It's all over.
And he missed it.
Oh my goodness, he still has something. Maybe rook c7 for a draw.
Both rooks are sacrificed.
Oh my goodness, might be winning, by the way, but he only needs a draw as the match clock expires and Hikaru is exasperated.
Oh my gosh, Amon. Hikaru had forced mate. And it's a draw by agreement. And it's the match.
He offers a draw, a gentleman's draw, and I mean, what a finish. It literally comes down to the last game, and look at the smile on even Hikaru's face. These guys are just two titans, two champions going at one another.
You cannot script this any better. Before we do anything, before we even congratulate Magnus, we have to show that last